Coming up after the grand final, it's the season review, part 2 of our finale to the 2025 campaign, and it's a big one as Clare Jones joins us to reflect on the 2025 season as a whole and what we can hope to learn going forward after the first season of 2.0. We'll debate our team of the year and how it stacks up against the official 7 voted for. We'll hand out some awards of our own, and we'll play franchise director and pick out where the 8 Super League teams might be looking to improve now the window is open. Let's crack on. Where should we start? Should we start with the team of the season, which is official if you were in the Fatton Park, but hasn't actually been announced by the Netball Super League yet? That's right, isn't it, Chloe?
I already said my piece on this.
Well, look, listen, it will be celebrated, we're led to believe, by Super League staff over the course of this week. I thought, to quote an old producer of mine, tight and bright, no waffle. That's how we're going to deal with this, okay? So we're going to go through each position and we'll name the person who won, and we'll potentially throw in a couple of suggestions ourselves and maybe come up with an unlocked team of the season. Is that a fair thing to do? Can we vote democratically on this?
I reckon you read off the name. We'll go around if it's agree, and then if it's a disagree, who else? And then we'll go like that.
Tight, bright, no waffle. That's what we call the episode.
Let's go.
Okay, so we'll start then with goalkeeper. Panthers Jazz Brown gets the nod. Do we have total agreement? No? Chloe?
Oh, no.
Okay. Claire, you shook your head first. You give us an alternative.
For me, I think it has to go to Josie Huckle. I thought she was, again, it's another season. I think she just seems to be growing and growing and growing, and I think she was just really deserving of that spot. I thought she's been brilliant again this season.
Chloe?
Okay, so I know these are the Super League website stats, so make of that what you will, audience. You know how we feel about those. But if we are to take them as the standard that we have, Jazz Brown, I hesitate because she has been brilliant. She's second in gains behind Fumi Fidoju by 2. I don't know why I held up 2. And I think that needs to be sat on and acknowledged because that's not a small thing that she's done there. But for me, Razia Quashie, she had 2 less games than everybody else and was sat second in intercepts behind Fumi Fidoju, again, who we're considering as the standard bearer, right? She's 25 to Fumi's 31. And then, at the end of the day, Mavericks became a top 4 team. Panthers didn't quite do that. Panthers did get like a scout, but Mavericks, I think that you have to look at their fate and Raz's performances and see that they are linked. And she is also a 3-time player of the match in the season. I think we have to look at that as well. So it's tough. It's super close for me. What do you reckon, Paul?
Yeah, I'm a little bit with you. I think the 3 we've mentioned, Jazz Brown, Raz Quashie, and Josie Huckle, the 3 standout performers at keeper this year. I think that's fair. I'd go with Quashie partly because I would have considered myself not a doubter before the season started. I felt she had highs to hit, and I remember a fair few years ago now, Raz was one of the first athletes we used for our player diary, and she was a brilliant person to speak to when we were at Sky. So I've always kind of kept a particularly close eye on her, and I just feel like this year we've seen maybe the consistency that hasn't always been there for her. So I don't want this to be seen as a casting vote, but I would vote for Raz Quashie, which would give her 2 votes to Josie Huckle's 1.
So you're saying I'm outnumbered, Paul?
I'm saying you're outnumbered, technically, yes. I'm saying Raz gets the vote for the unlocked team of the season at goalkeeper. But would we all be happy to accept that?
Can't argue with it.
It's 2-1.
Okay, very good. 2-1. That moves us on to goal defence. Fumi Fidoju. Any questions or qualms here?
No questions or qualms. I will say, just to put it out there, that the numbers are down on last season for me is like the way she tops tables, the gap is smaller than it was last season. So I think that's really interesting, given that we know she's re-signed. Spoiler alert. But I mean, the way she took that grand final on, I think she really deserves to be the goal defence of the season for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd also want to add that actually I think the caliber of goal defences that are currently performing, one that kind of already springs to mind, I think Tash Pavlin, for example. I think she has really, really proven her worth at Forest. I think she's been super impressive. There just feels as if we are producing a lot of good, solid goal defences at the moment.
Jackie Newton as well.
Jackie, yeah, I've written Tash Pavlin down. She was my kind of backup to Fadoju. Jackie Newton, I think, has been a measure of consistency for a number of years now. I'd love to have seen a full season from Nick Smith, Thunder. Obviously, her versatility is super useful as well, but I think she's been fantastic. I think we should probably say at Mavs, and this is probably in Raz's favour as well, like she had to play with a number of different goal defences through that first half of the year, but Gemma Donohue's kind of made an impression as well. I think as we talk through some of these positions, we'll probably feel that maybe we're lighter in some areas than others, but goal defence definitely doesn't feel like one. There is some real standout talent. Okay, agreed. Nice. Wing defence. Cassie Howard from Leeds Rhinos gets the vote. Anyone like to put forward anyone else? Go on, Claire. You ought to get.
You know what? I didn't. She wasn't on my initial kind of cards, but actually, probably Leeds Rhinos I haven't followed the most, so also that could be why. But I also think actually a good wing D goes about their business and kind of does all the work with very little recognition. And so then it made me quite curious about her stats. So I did have a little look, and her stats are impressive. You know, in terms of a wing defender, she is up there in terms of gains and interceptions. But I think for me, without being too stats heavy and basing a decision off of feeling, I suppose, I would have to give Elle McDonald a shout out, because I think she's been playing out of position all season, but hasn't looked at all out of position. And I think what she's done in order to kind of connect in with Jackie Newton, Alex Johnson, actually that unit this season has been so solid. And she's been, again, a big instigator of big turnovers, getting interceptions when Dragons have really needed. So maybe the stats don't reflect that, but I think just of feeling and actually kind of seeing the games that she's played in, I'd have to give her a mention.
I think it's so true. I mean, Claire, you are a wing defence, so
True.
We know what you're talking about here.
Going here. It's definitely going
to the wing defence. To how you measure the impact of a wing defence, it's more than a real numbers game. I completely agree with that. Particularly as you are often the pawn in a setup of a defence, and it's not often designed for you to go and get. And I think Cassie Howard has been great. I think actually wing defence is another position that we're quite strong in this league. Elle McDonald for me, Claire, I nearly put her in my team at the halfway point. I kind of almost regretted it as soon as I didn't. Hannah Layton, I think, has also had a great impact at Forest. For me, it's got to be Zara Everett, actually. I think she, in that, again, I can't base it on the final alone, and I won't, but the job that she does in London Pulse's defensive unit, which we recognise as title winning and very, very like across the I just think for me she may be a bit penalty heavy, but I reckon she's useful at wing defence. Paul?
But we were discussing this on Sunday, Chloe. She does seem to have cleaned up over the second half of the year, because there was a definite period in the middle part of the season where it seemed like she was getting an awful lot of whistle, and that certainly cleaned up over the second half of the year. Yeah, Zara's a good shout. Elle's a great shout as well. And shout out to her. She's going back to Australia as well. I saw she announced that this week. So that'll be definitely one change incoming as far as Dragons are concerned. I went with Cassie Howard at the halfway point of the season. And I think in a team that struggled for identity throughout the year, I thought she basically was their identity for the majority of the year. So I think I'm probably going to stick with Cassie Howard, but I could very easily be swayed in any number of directions. And Hannah Layton is someone who I think has gone over the last 3 or 4 seasons from strength to strength to strength. She gets better and better in that position, which is to be a complete nuisance, if that's not too fine a way to say it. Claire, that is a great...
That's a compliment.
Yes, good, excellent, good. Okay, I'm going to go with Cassie Howard, which means we're split as a Netball Unlocked podcast. So we did say that the vote would go with the wing defence in the room, so she can go in the Netball Unlocked team of the year. Yes. Is that fair?
Yeah, go on.
Totally fair. I'm going Al McDonald.
Okay, fair enough. Centre. I struggled a little bit with centre. Amy Carter was the vote, who's in the sort of official 7 from Thunder. We are unashamedly Amy Carter fans at the Netball Unlocked podcast. I would agree, partly because I'm not quite sure anyone else has stood up enough to kind of put themselves in the mix. Claire, what comes to you first?
Yeah, I definitely would find coming up against Amy Carter quite a challenge when I was playing. She's very unassuming, and she is absolutely a jack of all trades in that middle. She can turn over ball, and she's also great kind of on the feed as well, and she just controls, I'd say, the pace of the game so well. I think the other name that I think would be worth noting would actually be Ruth Hughes. Probably not expected to play as much as she has, and it's her first kind of Super League season as a contracted player. She's had to really step up, and she's had to really kind of mature in how she plays, and I actually think she has done a really good job. I would still probably stick with Amy Carter, but I think Ruth Hughes for me in the middle is definitely worth a shout out.
Chloe?
I think also I will go with Amy Carter, but I think Tyler Orr needs a little moment as well. The way, like the conducting role, I think, is, as Claire kind of alluded to with Ruth Hughes and with Amy there. I think it's also what Tyler was doing very well at London Pulse, and having to share the bib as well, you know, as an Aussie import from a winning SSN side, to sort of have the grace to share it with Gracie in the way that she did and recognise her role within that sharing, I think is, you know, brilliant. But I think I'll go Carter overall. I think the team of the All Star VII is correct here.
Yeah, I think so. I also think what you said there about sort of Tyler and Gracie is a really good thing. Anyone who's been at the Copper Box will see that they often arrive together. I think Tyler's played a massive role in kind of how Gracie's been able to adapt to the Super League and kind of throw herself into it. I think it's when I spoke to Sam Bird before the season started, I think she was very keen to make sure her attack end and defensive end were knitted together a lot more than they maybe have been over the last couple of years through injury and various other things. I think Tyler's given them absolutely what they needed in that mid-court, and she really does kind of tick things over. So I would go honourable mention, but Carter gets the nod for me as well. Wing attack, one of the revelations of the season, I think it has to be said here. Susie Liversidge got the official vote from Mavericks. I can't see any. I could make a case maybe for Amy Rayner would be my sort of second cab off the rank. Who did I just say? Did I say Amy Rayner? Sorry.
Amy Rayner. I think that's what I heard.
She would be very close for me. I think I had her in my halfway team of the season. Claire, I'll come to you first again.
Yeah, I think Susie kind of really had her, I guess, her Lois Pearson moment, I think you could call it, couldn't you? Of kind of stepping into that wing attack role and sometimes at centre as well. And again, just very much appears to be an individual that kind of gets on with the job and just does that job very well. So yeah, I'm not mad about Susie Liversidge being there at all, and I would agree with you, Paul. But I think towards the end of the season, I was a big Emma Rayner fan, and was again really impressed, I think, by her maturity out on court. But the more I watched India Massa come on with impact, her flair and her creativity again, there was a moment in the season where I was like, oh gosh, I don't actually know who I'd go for over Emma and India. I really, really don't know. So I think they both would give me a good headache to have. But I think, again, just for overall impact and consistency throughout the season, Susie would get my vote.
Susie for me, no notes. No, of course there are some notes. I think the way she handled so much ball for Mavericks, and like that front end was sticky and had to go through a lot and came through a lot of games. On the good side, as obviously, you know, Mavericks finished top 4, but she, by the end of the latter half of the season, she was the person if you were coming up against Mavericks, you were circling, because that's how much of a role she was really playing in that side. And as Claire's pointed out, that sort of shift into centre that we've seen, and how well she's sort of done that as well. Kind of as an attacking centre, we don't really see that so much in the Super League game. I think a lot of our centres are defending centres. So, and I think you have to acknowledge, like, it's her first season at wing attack. She's a goal attack come wing attack. So yeah, I think what a statement. I love the expression hello's Pearson moment. I think that's brilliant, because it feels right. It feels like the way to, you say so much in that. So yeah, I think the 7 is correct here.
Yeah, I think so. Goal attack, I think Berry Neal got the official vote. We were talking a little bit about this at the weekend, Chloe, and maybe it's the super shot, and maybe we'll see it evolve. But it feels like this year the role of the goal attack has been kind of halfway between two different things. Like, I think we've seen Forest struggle with what they need that role to be. Pulse sort of chopped and changed between Nicole Briett and Sophie Kelly. It just feels like maybe we haven't mastered what a goal attack in the super shot era might be. That's a bit of a big picture takeaway. I was going to drop that in at the end, but while we're sort of chatting about goal attacks, it does feel like, because I'm struggling to pick like a real standout this season.
Yeah, I think this position has definitely caused a headache, and it does make me kind of reflect on teams I've been in and the importance of roles and your role in whatever position you've been selected as, but also the coach having a really key idea of what roles they want the certain positions to play. And I actually probably remember feeling the happiest in the Birmingham 2022 squad. We did so much work as individuals and obviously as a squad in terms of your personal strengths, what you bring, and kind of really like in-depth analysis on ourselves but one another. And I was your impact player for both wing D and centre, and I knew that if additional defensive pressure was needed, that would be the reason that I would come onto court. And again, that was probably the happiest being in that squad, because I knew my purpose and I knew my role. But you had 12 other girls feeling exactly the same and so secure, very kind of black and white in terms of why we're there, why we're sat where we are, and what the game plan needs. I think, coming back to your point, Paul, I'd agree. I think it is, again, whilst coaches are probably teething with tactics and the super shot, what comes with that is actually, what do you want from your goal attacks? What do you want then from your attacking unit? And how are you going to bring the best out of the individuals that you've got? Or now in this sign-in window, who have you seen throughout the season that you think you complement with the style of play that I want my squad to play like? So, I mean, that is kind of probably a separate conversation in itself, but I would probably have to hone in on Kira Rothwell. Betsy Creek, arguably, I think maybe worked better as a goal shooter when Gav Sinclair came back, but I think actually she was huge for Birmingham Panthers this year. And Kira Rothwell unfortunately had a little bit of time out in the season, but you know, when that was the season that I saw live Dragons v Mavericks, and she was a really, really impressive character and an athlete to watch.
Yeah, it is really difficult, I think, goal attack, and part of me is wondering if the answer would have been Lois Pearson had Lois Pearson played a whole season, because when she did come on and came towards the back end of Thunder's season, her impact was unreal very quickly. instant, wasn't it? As if she hadn't been away, which is remarkable given that she picked up an injury in the international window. And I think some credit goes to the rotating cast of Thunder's goal attack. And to your point, Claire, about a goal attack's purpose, the fact that I don't know how many people put the goal attack bib on for Thunder by the end of the season, but the fact they all came on and played that role to a pretty good level, right? Thunder finished third tells you that Karen Gregg certainly knows what a goal attack wants. If only they could stick around and be healthy. Obviously, I don't mean that like that. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I get it.
For me, I would probably tweak the rules a little bit, and I would have had Elmarie van der Berg as my goal attack, given that she did share that bid between the goal attack and the goal shooter. It's not an out and out goal attack, I suppose, but 840 minutes she was at 493 goals in the regular season, so at 93%. Given she did do those two positions. Interesting, I think Gabby Sinclair as well, another one, if she'd had a full season, I think would have been really in contention for this goal attack position as well. Towards the back end, when she was getting 60 minutes of goal attack, as you said, Claire, when Betsy probably slid back to goal shooter, she was starting to take over games, and people were genuinely very much struggling to mark her. So if Gabby Sinclair sticks around over the signing window, that would be awesome to see a full season from her. I don't think we've yet to see that in the NSL. So yeah, I don't know. For what it's worth, I don't think it's Barry Nail, but I would put Elmarie in there if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to work out who played goal attack the most. And I do think you can make a pretty good case for Elmarie in that position. I agree with Claire. I think Betsy Creek, she was in my team of the season at the halfway stage. I thought she had taken on a leadership role in that team, which I kind of hadn't really seen within her, maybe because we hadn't seen enough of her over the past couple of seasons. I also thought Philippa Yarrington is worth a shout. She was probably someone who played at goal attack pretty much all season, but I would tweak the rules as well, and I'd go with Elmarie as the goal attack. She played there often enough, and I think in the circumstances we could make a legitimate case that Van der Berg could be our goal attack of the season. Claire, would you be all right with that?
I'm happy to be outnumbered on this one.
No notes, to use your quote earlier, Chloe, but Rolene, we're not disagreeing with Rolene as the shooter, are we?
No, absolutely not.
An incredible season, a fantastic debut season. We hope we'll see her again next season. But yeah, just incredible to come into the league, a league that has sort of brought in a brand new rule that not everyone was aware of when the season started, and to dominate circles the way she has dominated circles this year has been really impressive to watch. Honourable mentions, I think Liv Sheen continues to go from strength to strength. She and Serena said it better than anyone has said it this season. That team flows through her as much as the identity for the team is their defence. When Liv is delivering the sort of accuracy she was delivering on grand final day, that courses through the rest of the team. It's massive. I think Liv deserves huge credit, but shooter, rolling striker. No debate required.
No.
Fair enough. Thanks, everyone. Well done. Thanks for participating. So we've got Razia Quashie as our goalkeeper, Fumi Fadoju as our goal defence, Elle McDonald as our wing defence, Amy Carter as our centre, Susie Liversidge as our wing attack, Elmarie van der Berg as our goal attack, and Rolling Striker as our goal shooter.
Lucky happy? South Africa, hey.
Okay, job well done. Thank you, everybody. That was good. I like that. We'll bring that back next season. That was very good. And we didn't even need to refer to Queen Jean, did we? Who I think was the real MVP of the season. Netty stats, delivering the information that we all need on a regular basis.
Quoted her a lot already in this episode.
We really have. Other awards, we've got a couple ourselves that we were going to throw into the mix, but if I'm right, and I don't want to jump the gun here, this stuff was named in the fan park, right? Coach of the Year and Young Player of the Year, Chloe? Or has that not been announced yet?
I believe that was announced. Yeah.
Coach of the Year, Camilla Buchanan from Mavericks, and Young Player of the Year, Jada Pekova. Do we want to put anyone else forward for these? Either of you?
I think you'd have to put in Chelsea Pittman. I think what she's done with Forest this year, to just marginally miss out on a top 4 slot in your first year of an entire new franchise, new brand, new team, new staff, etc. I think that's got to be kind of recognised. So for me, I'd throw in Chelsea Pittman.
I'm putting in Karen Gregg here because of I completely, definitely, Claire, to your point, Chelsea building a culture and a team, I think there's and a happy one, as well. The Forest girls look really happy, and to own Rolene and to bring out the best in her as well, totally. But to me, Karen, the adversity that she had to deal with consistently throughout the season, and to bring up young players from the pathway that fit in, Shannon Malik played 11 out of 14 games. That's, as a 17-year-old, is super impressive. And I think bringing in India Massa, who, as to permanently replaces the terminology, Nat Metcalf, and to elevate her game as well, and to bring, and Lucy Herdman as well as another shooter that Karen Gregg drew on, I think is, to me, deserves some props in this conversation for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think both Karen and Chelsea very, very worthy. I mean, Mavs have ended a sort of near decade-long drought, and I think for them it's been a culmination of sort of a lot of hard work over the last couple of years. They had their own adversity. I think it'll be interesting to see how they evolve, because by their own admission, they kind of weren't always in games and relied heavily on the super shot to sort of pull them back into things. So I think obviously in these instances you always want to give the grand final winning coach a shout as well. That team's been built over a long period of time, but I feel like as much as we've mentioned quite a lot of the Pulse players, I think there was an expectation that they'd be there or thereabouts. Thunder dealt with a lot for me, and I would probably go with Karen or Chelsea as my coach of the year, I think.
Young player?
Yeah, this is interesting. I didn't have a chance to go all the way through ages here, but I don't know if either of you want to get the ball rolling here, but I was going to mention Shannon Malik as a 17-year-old. That's pretty incredible for her to have done what she'd done over the course of the season. Alex Johnson for me as well, given the sort of circumstances that she kind of came into that Dragons team and started. Claire probably won't thank me for saying this, but I think she's given herself a real chance of going somewhere and being a goalkeeper next year, because she was outstanding. So I think those two for me, because the definition of young for me might be sort of players we've not seen too much of at all. Izzy Phillips is still super, super young. Had a brilliant season. We didn't even mention her when it came to wing defence. Gracie's impact for a 16-year-old is pretty incredible. Jada has had a fantastic season, but for me, we kind of know what Jada's about. She's been around the league, so in my head, young player of the year is almost like a US style rookie of the year.
How old do you think young player is? As in young player, how old do you think Jada is?
She is 20, isn't she?
Yeah, so I still think that's.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
fair
that's
enough.
still
Yeah.
young. I don't know. To me, she was. I felt like maybe we should have mentioned her in goalkeeper of when we were going through that. I think she had a case, but it is difficult, and with ages and criteria here as well, because Shannon Malik wasn't ever contracted into a 10. Is that a prerequisite for this? I don't know. But yeah, as I said, played 11 out of 14 games, so might as well have been in lots of ways. Yeah, I thought she was outstanding as well. We do have a lot of young players in this league. I think this is what this has taught me.
Very true. Claire, any contenders from you?
I don't know how to feel about this, because I think Jada needs kind of some recognition somewhere of the season that she's had. It's that pairing between her and Tash Pavlin is really kind of solidified. But I think because now I feel as though I've seen Jada around the block for a few seasons now, or kind of in and around the training partner role, obviously in Bath last year. This year she's had a great season. She's had opportunities now with England. I think it's interesting, that correlation of perhaps the more kind of appearances that you have or seasons that you've got under your belt, perhaps you're not considered that young player anymore. But as you say, Chloe, she's 20. Most people don't make maybe their Super League debuts until they're in their but that is young. That is really, really young. So
and Alex Johnson is older than her as well. I should point that
yes,
out.
absolutely. And I think Alex Johnson's a great shout. But again, I think she actually came to mind before Jada did. But again, I think it's probably a correlation that Alex has been more of that training partner role in Loughborough, hasn't had a kind of a season under her belt yet. And so in my mind then I probably associate that with that kind of youngster rookie kind of recognition of the season. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think again, yeah, Shannon definitely deserves a shout out. You've got your Emma Rayners, your India Massers, Gracie Smith,
Anya Williams.
Yeah, Sophie from Pulse, I thought it was incredible actually how her and Nicole almost flip-flopped and really complemented each other when Nicole kind of went through a little bit of a rough patch in the season, and was able just to kind of, Sophie almost, her trajectory into the season really seamlessly took over for Nicole, and then vice versa then more towards the end of the season. So she did a brilliant job for Pulse when they really needed her in place of Nicole. So I am really, really torn with this one.
Is the answer that maybe we need like best rookie and a separate young, or like
I saw the Athletic do this when it came to the Premier League's Player of the Year awards. They did something similar and had almost an identical kind of conversation that we've just had. It's like, actually, there is a difference between someone coming into the league for the first time or making their debut or whatever it might be. Because, I think having debated all of this, Jada's probably not a bad shout, to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm kind of happy with that. But I do think we've seen younger players come in and make an impact. So yeah, I kind of like the idea of a young player of the year and an almost a rookie of the year. But would Rolene count as a rookie of the year for her first Super League season?
By definition, yeah.
Give her a 5th award of the season.
Well, I've floated the idea of best import, I'd give her that.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in. But look, I think as much as we've sort of spoken about a couple of positions that have struggled and whatnot, I think we've just spoken there that there is still a very healthy side to the game, and it's good to see younger players. And we should point that out, right? As part of the sort of squad building, there are protocols that you need to kind of fit in terms of imports. Chloe, you feel quite passionately about this, and sort of younger players, homegrown people in each area of the court. It's a difficult jigsaw puzzle to put together.
I think that we should open up like unlimited imports. I think for the quality of the league, I think to me there is still probably a layer of this. I don't know. Let me rephrase this. If we are trying to make the Super League, put it in competition with SSN, then we do need to undo that cap. Depends what you want from this league. If there are vested interests about national team building going on, then that's a different thing. But then we need to be transparent about that. From the rhetoric coming from the top of the league, from Clare Nelson, it's to be the best, most vibrant, most competitive league, in which case I think to do that earnestly, you do need to lift the import cap.
I agree.
But look, because we've seen the quality of import that we can have already. And I do think when you look at SSN, and we've said this already on this podcast, but Grace Wecke with Helen Housby is blockbuster. It's blockbuster netball. Shamira Sterling with Humphrey with Latanya Wilson is awesome. Like, that's the stuff you want to see. Yes, okay, you maybe hand Jamaica a little advantage come the majors, but at the same time, if you want the best, you want to see the best play against the best, then you need to have the best, and that to me means welcome the world in. But then you have to concede that you might not have so many young players in your league, but that to me is like, buckle up and be on the journey, and if you are right, and then you will have your time, because we still see young players in SSN break through. Sophie Fawns is an example of that. The Thunderbirds currently have some teenagers in their squads as well. So I do believe that if the process is done properly, the support is there, then the cream still comes to the top. But at the moment, there is the risk of like you bring imports in, they do really well, and then they crack on to somewhere else because why wouldn't you? Like somewhere else, the other side of the world, you get paid more, you play against tougher opposition. So so long as that other option exists and we're not genuinely in contention with that, then I feel like you do lose that. You are going to be second or even third, if depending on how you feel about ANZ. So yeah.
Claire, while we're here, have you got any thoughts on it? I've been pretty clear. I agree with Chloe. I think if you're going to lose some of your best players to a league, you should absolutely have the platform to give the African and the Caribbean nations like the opportunity to come and play over here. We've seen it, right? You play. We mentioned her. We were talking a bit earlier. Shaquanda. She was like, what a great addition to the Super League. And I feel like if we want to be the best, at some point you kind of have to bring in those players with a little bit more freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my God, what an addition Shaquanda Green was. I miss her very dearly. I guess, yeah, and ultimately I suppose the focus here is solely on the domestic season. I think just listening, I couldn't help but have kind of a bit of an international hat on and kind of then ponder about if we did open up the kind of, a all-inclusive cap, what would that mean for the international stage and how we ensure that England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, etc., have that opportunity to compete under the best domestic league, especially in the UK, in order then to be able to close the gap against the internationals that are already ahead of us. So that would be my only concern, is actually, do we need some slight protection over kind of the UK girls that would ensure that we're still prioritising our international programmes so that we have athletes in amongst the domestic league that when they come into international season, we know that they're conditioned, we know that they're playing at the top level, because it is a big gap, for girls that don't play in Super League but then are expected to play at an international level. There is a big jump, so it's I think that's just something to consider.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, and that's the tension I think that does exist. And then maybe in the ideal universe, there's unlimited cap on imports, but then the league grows and you have more teams. So I think that looks to me the trajectory that SSN is on. Like, it looks like it's going to expand, and I think a lot of Australian coaches will be happy with that, because it does allow some of their to protect their pathways as well, because they are passionate about that too. We obviously have a bunch more international pathways to consider because of the makeup of our great union, but yeah, I think that is the tension for sure. It's a tough one.
It's a massively interesting debate, right? And the problem is because netball kind of just needs to decide what it wants to be in this country. It wants to be big, it wants to be bold, it wants to kind of forge forward to its professional era. And sometimes the trade-off, and I think, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, sometimes the trade-off is you do lose a sort of bit of young talent for a period. If we go back to when the Premier League started in the early 90s, right? Like players like Dennis Bergkamp, Ruud Gullit, Gianfranco Zola, sort of in their mid to late 30s, which was pretty much unheard of for a period of time. They would come over here and they were great players with great names, but they were very much on the downward trajectory of their career, but they were name brands and they brought eyeballs to the league. Anyway, definitely not a debate for right now. We'll probably save that for mid-season. Final one of the awards, game of the season. And does anything stand out to you in particular? I loved Forest's first win over Lightning. I think it was back in round 4. Won it by 1, like it was mental. It had a bit of everything. It went backwards and forwards. Both teams had the lead. And I think it was the moment we probably all thought Forest have arrived. I thought that was good. It had a chaos factor for me as well, which I like.
Claire?
Oh my gosh, where do you even begin?
It's a good point.
Oh my goodness. I think I've actually been a big fan of seeing the trajectory of Forest in general. I'm a big nerd when it comes to things like culture, how things look. how things are done professionally, etc. And I feel like I've really got on board with kind of the makeup of Nottingham Forest. So very general, I would say they have been they've been such value to this league this season. So that's been great. Oh my gosh, I feel like reflecting on all the games, you're trying to think of like
Quite a
what
lot, yeah.
particular, aren't you? I actually have loved. I know it's like more recent, but I've loved the kind of the preliminary semi-finals. I think kind of Loughborough v Thunder was a final in itself, wasn't it? And again, like I say, I think the standout performance was Alice Harvey on El Murray. You know, I just loved that spark and that passion wherever it came from was amazing. Oh my goodness, you have
Well,
to.
you don't need to go any further than that.
Dragons is
You have to
going to
mention
win.
Dragons.
You have to. I think again, having been in a club where chasing your first win is pretty relentless. You know, when you finally get over the line, yeah, super pleased to be able to see them get over the line this season, and it was a game that they played very, very well. So I think they would be my highlights, I would say.
I'm gonna go with when Forest took out Pulse. That was big. That was a big plot twist in the season, wasn't it? When they did that, so I'll shout that one out. But for me, the game I really enjoyed in person was Thunder Pulse, when Pulse beat Thunder by 5 in the Copper Box. That was just a bloody good game of
It was a good
netball.
game.
Like, I
Yeah, that was a
really
really good
enjoyed
game.
that. Even if it wasn't like a super result, it just felt really like I was so absorbed in that game. And getting to be there was a bit of a cherry on the top. But we've had some absolute smash hits. I mean, we need to talk about that Rhinos
Oh
game
yeah,
as
of
well.
course.
Trademark. Whether or not it was the game, it was a big game,
It was a
in terms
defining
of how
game. Yeah,
a
there's a lot to
defining.
come out
Yeah,
of
that's
that.
the way to put it, isn't it? Yeah. And how this challenged the professionalism of this league, didn't it? Really, like, challenged what it meant for it to be professional, and I think we learned a lot out of it. But that has to just chuck that in there into this.
Well, look, on that subject, that's a pretty good segue, and we do have to kind of try and bring this plane into land at some point. What about the season as a whole, Claire? Kind of, we spoke to you right at the start of it, and we spoke about kind of professionalism and the journey that this league was about to go on. I've been quite passionate about. I think what was going to happen between now and the start of next season is maybe the most significant, even more than the launch. It's like, what lessons have we learned? Where do we go? So, just like a couple of things for you that you'd like to see taken forward, good, bad, indifferent. Where do you stand?
I think my message doesn't change, I don't think, from that kind of round one. You know, we threw the kitchen sink at this season, and as I said previously, a lot of chaos can come from that, but also a lot of learnings can come from that. And kind of it's all been and done now. We're through our first season, so we've kind of got to really look at that and look on the positives, absolutely, because there has been absolutely loads. However, the learnings are going to be so important. And again, I said it before, a little bit earlier, but for me, going into this second season of professionalisation, we have to hone in on our netball culture. And that includes your top dogs, down to our administration, down to your coaches, your athletes, our reporters, our crowd. And we have to get everyone on the same page. You know, every franchise will have their own culture and their own bubble. We've got to start looking at netball more broadly, and we have to start looking at the culture of netball. Part of that is making sure that the basics are done well. So actually that's how we get things done seamlessly. That's how we make one another feel valued. That's how we make kind of the athletes feel as if they've got a real platform to then really deliver what the culture of netball looks like and entice more and more people into the sport. So I would really like to hope that there is a big reflective space from this summer that kind of goes, what are people saying the most? What are the things that are really easy fixes that we can solve? How can we make our staff feel really included on this super, super exciting journey of building netball? And they are a part of that, and they are contributing to that, but their role looks like XYZ. And if they're doing it, they have to do it really, really bloody well. So I would like to think that is what's happening behind the scenes, ready for next year. So again, we don't have a repeated conversation of so-and-so name was wrong, or this athlete got mixed up with this athlete, or as we said earlier, the winning coach of the grand final 2025 was actually named as the captain of the winning team. So they're my hopes, dreams, and aspirations.
Very good.
I mean, it's
Follow that, Chloe.
yeah. Go on, Claire. Bloody hell. No, I completely agree. The details are so important, and they have been missed at quite some significant junctions. And it would be easy to get sort of sucked in by some great netball on a grand final stage that was pretty awesome, but let's just be real that we ran into several bumps on this road. So that was broadcast, that was statistical information at a junction when you're introducing a whole new element to the game. Like, that's a massive miss. I think also the injury side of things, the 10 player squad was super tested to a point where I think that needs to be something that looks at. It'd be really interesting to see what learnings are taken from that. We talked about concussion, the kind of injuries that we've had as well. Like, what are we doing in that space around rest and recovery? We've had players come on and tell us the load is more, we're being asked to do more, we're giving up jobs. Like, what does that look like longer term? How are we going to do this growing pain period? Because that's what we're in. No one's asking for it to be finished, but like, let's see some progress on that. And I think, the game will change. It will evolve. Like the super shot, we kind of got drunk on it a little bit, but like, what's going to adapt, what's going to go forwards, like that would be something interesting to see. And that's like, as a spectator and as analysts of the game, that will be quite cool to have that. And I do think coverage, commercial, like all of that needs to evolve. We need to see growth. We're talking right now during the middle of Wimbledon, women's Euros, the Formula One was on. Like, this space is crowded. So we know we've got fantastic netball. We know we've got fantastic athletes. We've got great storylines. We've been here all season talking about them. Like, who else is going to join us in doing that? And those are things that are so important to the health and growth of the sport over this 10-year period. So I'm completely with Claire. Let's see what comes out of it. Arenas, right? Were they successful? I'm sure numbers are being crunched, but like ticket sales, that kind of stuff will be like franchise directors, CEOs will be looking at that and asking. And it'll be interesting to see what learnings have come out of that, because that was heralded as such a big part of this professionalization process. So yeah, Paul, what about you?
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with all of those. I think the arena stuff is something I was going to mention. I thought the major and minor semi-finals felt like a real missed opportunity. Both of those two games were brilliant, but both of those games weren't played in front of the kind of crowds we saw on Grand Final Sunday, and I can't help but think that's because they were announced like less than a week before they were supposed to be kind of taking place. I don't think that's helpful. That, to me, we talk about easy fixes and culture, and that seems to me something that could be addressed pretty easily at the start of the year. I'm pretty sure no one wants to give up home advantage, clearly, but could we have both in one venue on a Saturday that meant we could get a load more people in attendance? I'm not saying that's a solution, but I felt both games probably deserved more than they got. And that's just a tangible example of something, okay, this is what happened, how do we make it a little bit better? And I think for me, they're the small steps I want us to take. And I'm not going to go on about stats because we've done it all season. You can't tell stories in sport without correct information and regular information. And my final one would be transparency. And I think it leads us to where we are at the moment with the signing window. Now, we're all fairly well connected. We know that there are players on 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts,
3-year contracts.
3-year contracts. This information isn't particularly public. It's not public at all, so nobody knows it. But obviously behind the scenes, clubs are looking to sign their players. We would be able to do a full episode if we knew the 7 places that were up for grabs over the course of the season. Create speculation, create storylines, and then in a couple of weeks' time, those storylines are filled because most of the squads are done and dusted, right? And I get that Australia is still ongoing, ANZ is still ongoing, but to me, like, if you want your sport to still be in the news all the time, this is a great time to be talking about player X is available, team A, B, and C all need a goal attack. Oh, I wonder who might sign her. And you can have a bit of a chat about fit and nuance. And I think that comes from transparency, right? Like, I feel like there's a bit on the Netball Super League's thing that they pushed out today that said in the era of 1 and 2 year contracts, there's like more room for speculation than ever before. And it's like, well, we don't know who's on 1 and 2 years. So how can we speculate about who needs to fill a gap as a team and who could fill a gap as a player? But that's me as a journalist looking for storylines. Chloe's point about injury and squad depth, I think, should be probably near the top, because it's our athletes that we need to protect in the first instance and make sure that they're equipped to put on occasions like we saw at the weekend.
Signing
windows, yeah. Go on, Chloe, give us the ins and the outs. How does this happen very quickly?
Oh gosh, okay. So clubs up until yesterday at 6 Monday, yes, for the purposes of the recording, it is Monday the 7th of July, were allowed to approach their own players and offer them contracts to re-sign, depending on what deal they were on originally. Then that, I think it's 6 a.m. on Monday, that opens up and you're allowed to approach players from different clubs and ask if they would like to come and join yours, or at least have dialogues, have conversations. If you've done your job well, normally a club will have already thought about all of this and have been ready to go first thing on Monday morning. Sometimes it doesn't quite crack that way because one club might be after a certain player and other clubs might also be after said player. So there is a lot that sort of goes on. As you said, Paul, we don't know officially 1 and 2 year contracts. You and I have a little understanding of certain folks. There is also, I believe, a document that has been circulated around this year. So players and clubs are very aware who's up and who's not. So, and that has been updated as the signing window has progressed. So that's transparent, at least for them. It's not so transparent, at least for us. I have not seen said document. I've just heard about it. But yeah, it is quite fun. In a way, quite chaotic. There is that element of like, you know, who's going what where, and I think after this season there are certainly gaps that we can see. There are certainly players that might be in high demand, and there is also 2 big leagues sort of looming in the distance that might also be interested in what's going on, and they are allowed, as far as I'm aware, these leagues are allowed to approach ours whenever they want, because they have their own internal rules for what they can't do in theirs. But, you know, it's free game over here. So, yes, did I explain that well enough? Did I miss?
In short, Claire, lots to look forward to over the next few weeks, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. I think it is strange. The sign-in window is very kind of closed doors, and I remember even as a player, you know, there would only be kind of a handful of people that I would talk kind of player-wise around kind of interest and stuff. Would namely probably be, you know, your Beth Dyke, Nia Jones, Susie Drain, Sarah Bell, previously Welsh international and Celtic Dragon players. There was a real kind of a handful of people that I would talk to about, you know, if I was stuck. I remember in my last year in particular, before I stayed with Dragons, it was a real kind of, do I move on? Do I go to Bath actually, or do I stay with Dragons? And yeah, I don't know. Again, it might be different for other franchises in terms of kind of you know, how they speak about it amongst each other, but you can sense that that feeling of secrecy as well, and it's not something that you really kind of talk about amongst each other really. So yeah, I think that has always interested me, because then if you look at, you know, football, for example, you're constantly seeing who's going on loan, or, you know, who's getting a sign in, and, you know, who's being paid £1 billion to play for who, you know. Just rub it in, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but again, I guess part of the suspense also does keep audiences engaged because it does create speculation, or kind of people are out there that will just look for the tiniest of hints and make a mountain out of a molehill. So I guess then that kind of creates excitement ready for when the announcements do come out, I suppose.
And we
Hashtag
should
Netball
say,
Chaos, right? Hashtag Netball Chaos. That is a place.
and we should say, and I missed it, but the squad announcement window is now live from Monday the 7th of July to the 5th of September. So it's a massive window in which clubs are allowed to announce, and they have, haven't they, Paul?
Well,
Mr. London Pulse?
they can't miss the London Pulse. Come on now. I didn't get a medal.
Well, tell us your news.
Well, look, I think everyone who's seen social media would recognise that Fumi Fudoju's kind of lovely dramatic music piece, to my understanding, she's registered for next year. So, like, I don't think that surprises anybody. Like, you gave that spoiler alert earlier, didn't you? When in the podcast where
Oh, sorry, did I?
you did, yeah.
I ruined it.
But look, I think it's great that we get to keep one of the best players in the league and in the country, in the world, on our soil here. It'll be interesting to see how many more polls can keep together. I think how other teams evolve. I think teams like Mavericks, Forest and Panthers, who were in that bracket, Mavericks got fourth, but it could easily have been any of them. How they evolve, there are small little tweaks that might be needed, because I think, and you alluded to this right at the top, Claire, teams like Thunder, Lightning, Pulse, those squads have been pretty much the same for the last 3, 4, 5 years, with small little additions here and there just to make them that little bit better each year. And I think maybe sort of Mavericks, Forest and Birmingham will consider themselves in that position. But Birmingham are doing this without a coach at the moment, and that's sort of one gap that very much needs to be filled. The other gaps that we know are 100% at the moment, Jodie Gibson, who it feels, we didn't really celebrate Jodie earlier on, but it was a great send-off for her. She was really given her flowers all over sort of Sunday. She would be missing from Loughborough, so that means Loughborough definitely had to make one change. We mentioned El McDonald's going back to Oz. That's definitely one change for Dragons. And Jiva Menta has retired, so that's a gap that Leeds need to fill. And I'd be very interested to see how Leeds go about their business with Lauren Palmer in charge. She's big on culture. We know she set up her own kind of pathway team who have gone from strength to strength and been fantastic. I think she's going to want to get a core of players together who she can grow with over the next 2, 3, 4 years. It won't be instant. In fact, she said that when we spoke to her earlier this year. But it'll be interesting to see how she starts to form that nucleus up there at Rhinos.
Yeah. And I think I think the signing window is interesting because you have to know the difference between what to replace and what you think you can sit tight and coach, and whether you decided to commit to a 1 or a 2 year with that player or not. But maybe we should run through sort of the teams and what we think they could use, might be interesting, probably going to look at. That might be a fun exercise. Keep it. What was it? No waffle.
Right and tight, no waffle.
Right, tight, no waffle.
One
right,
last
Claire.
time.
Let's start with Rhinos then. What do you think they need?
I think they need to improve their mid-court.
Mid-court?
I think I'd agree. But I think structurally, because they've got great individual players, they're just not clicking for me as a whole and in units. So I think it's going to be either a case of improving the mid-court, or I think there's some work to be done around the identity of how Leeds Rhinos needs to play.
Very fair. What are they going to be?
I reckon that you want more ball winners in defence. So that goalkeeper pickup will be really interesting, and how that's worked on, as Claire says, in that identity piece. And I reckon goal attack is an area they'll be looking at as well. Okay, Mavericks. Who wants to go first? Claire.
I think, depending on how Raz recovers from injury, think they need to. I'm going to go defensively. I think if they can retain Gemma Donahue, brilliant. If Raz is fitting well, to re-sign, brilliant. But then I think you need that kind of a replacement goalkeeper, Goldie, to cover. I think Izzy Phillips, bless her, was brilliant at actually just being an absolute hustler, as she had a little debut at Goldie. But I think that exposed actually a bit of a window for Mavericks.
And with that back end, there's room for an import, right? Because that's all. Gemma Donahue has an English passport, Raz is English, so that's could be very interesting on that front if that's where Mavericks go. Paul, would you reckon for Mavericks?
I think cleaning up the attack end, they kind of found their way through a few problems at different times. Kira Rothwell was injured. Emma Thacker wasn't quite, I think, what they would have liked her to be. Emily Andrew is very young. It's her first season. She seems to be carrying an injury through the second half of the season. 5 different players put up shots in their semi-final against Thunder, which doesn't seem sustainable. So I think kind of unlocking what they want to do, whether they keep faith with Emily Andrew, you would think so, as an import who's kind of young. Do they decide that a goal attack maybe will help unlock them a little bit, and then a goal attack who maybe plays with a little bit more consistency and delivers on the super shot, because they owned the super shot. They use their bench well in that regard with Kira Rothwell, so you kind of wouldn't want to lose that element. But I feel that probably goal attack is where they need some strength.
Oh, both ends of the court for you guys then. Interesting. Okay, London Pulse. What do you do, Claire?
Oh, that is a tough. That's really tough.
Whole team resign?
Gosh, do you say, look, we've done the treble, we're going to start again? No, I think if I was Sam Bird, I would be itching to re-sign. I think you look at your starting 7 and your impact players. Why would you kind of want to change a team that has just solidified a 5-year journey essentially? And everything kind of came together right where it needed to. You'd surely want to retain as many as possible and aim to do the double.
The challenge is keeping them, right? I don't think anyone would shy away from that. Sort of, we know Fumi's staying, Liv continues to go from strength to strength. Zara's a fantastic player. Tyler's Australian. At some point you might think SSN is going to come calling for at least 3 or 4 of those guys. What Pulse do well is obviously develop talent, so I'm sure that there's players coming through the pathway system. I would say the priority is keep as many players as you can. Both Thunder and Lightning have shown that that's the way forward. Pulse have been able to do it the last few years. You would think if Fumi's staying, you'd be fairly confident that maybe most are staying put, but we'll wait and see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But that would have to be the priority. Maybe cleaning up goal attack, because they chopped and changed a little bit. But Sophie's a very young player. We sort of seen her grow. You spoke about how much the team, and Sam spoke about the defensive work that Nicole had done. We're nitpicking, but perhaps that's somewhere they might feel that they could improve. But yeah, keeping everyone together.
Yeah, I think I would agree that the goal attack is probably like the weakest point, the weakest link in the chain, but it's still a very solid chain. Absolutely. It just won a title, a treble, as Claire has said. Interesting also with London Pulse, I think, with that squad, is Sam spoke to us about loyalty in her post-match interview after the final, and that really seems to me to suggest and she said we want to win it again, right? So it's a whole re-sign, isn't it? Maybe. Okay, let's see. Forest up next. What are you doing?
For me, it is probably a goal attack position that I'd want to kind of really focus in on. And yeah, I think otherwise I'd be pretty happy. Yeah.
I think it's as simple as that. I think the connections that they've started to build are really, really good. I think Rolene is clearly fantastic. Hopefully she stays on for another year. And then it's kind of how you work that battle out, right? Because Ria is so key to the way they play in many, many ways. But then for, 5 minutes of every quarter, she becomes not a problem, but she becomes largely redundant. We saw the way teams were just almost happy to let her have a shot. Now, do you evolve your style to sort of combat that, or do you try and bring yourself in an option? I suppose with Rhea and Freya Henshaw, they had those two options there, and if they're honest, probably neither worked from a super shot perspective. But I think that's what's really interesting. It's like it's very specific what Forest probably need to do, because if you take out the super shot, Rhea's like a fundamental part of their game plan. That's why it's a very difficult needle to thread.
And also, we have to say, with Rolene at the goal shooter, it would have to be a domestic goal attack, right? So that's the other piece of the little puzzle that kind of fits into that.
That's what we're saying.
I think also, forgive me, that Forrest will probably be looking at a circle defender. I don't think Farida Kadondi, if she's on a 1 year, I would imagine they probably wouldn't have extended, but we'll see. Maybe she's on a 2. But if that option is there, I think they might recruit, and in which case that leaves an option open for an import defender, which could be exciting for Forest if they switch that up. Okay. Birmingham Panthers, hard to call this one because there is no personnel that we know of yet. What do you reckon for that one, Claire, with Panthers?
Oh, do you know, I really feel actually for the athletes at Panthers, because again, I just think you're going in blind, and I think as an athlete, like, you know, there's a lot of anxiety around this time anyway, around whether you're going to get a sign in, and I don't know. I feel really tough calling it without there being a coach. Because ultimately I just feel like the girls are put in a little bit of an unfair position, because they could, you know, want to sign, but then a coach ends up being signed who maybe doesn't particularly like their style of play, or it doesn't marry up to what they envisage and could end up with a season on the bench when they could have gone elsewhere. So I'm actually going to put onus back on the franchise to kind of actually solidify the importance of having a coach in place to help with athletes feeling a little bit more secure about what their future might look like.
And that's also Claire, right? Because people are being re-signed. People have already been re-signed. So what do you do as Panthers? Do you stick or twist? And what does that mean for those that have maybe been let go? Is Panthers a viable option? Do they know what's going on? Like, I think it is a bit of a block in the whole window as to like what's going on. So I couldn't even, when I made notes about who needed what, I just left this one blank because I feel like you can answer that question until you know, Paul, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I think obviously they might have an issue with depending on how long Ziggy's out for. Like she obviously had a pretty nasty injury, so it's like, okay, they lost Gabby halfway through the season, Gabby Marshall that is. But there were some wins in there as well, right? Like Ruth Hughes, as Claire's mentioned. Gabby Coffey was a fantastic arrival. Jazz Brown is obviously like a superstar, so that there are building blocks there, but how long are those building blocks there for?
All right then, Lightning, you've just missed out on a grand final. What do you do? Paul?
Why are you asking me first? I feel like obviously with no Jodie Gibson, they've got a defender that they will need to add, and I think how that defender allows them to kind of change their identity a little bit. I think Shadeen gave them a really kind of obvious ball winner, and I think that was something that was a huge asset for them last year. Season before, Nick Smith had given them versatility, so it's like, okay, what are you bringing in, and how's it going to kind of complement what you do? I'd be surprised if they changed that mid-court, even though I think they need an additional option. They have invested a lot of time in Bella Bayliss. I think we'll probably see more court time for her if she stays. And then at the attack end, obviously it's Sammy Wallace-Joseph, it's Berry Neal, and in the end it was Ella Clark, but we did see a little bit of Antonia Mitchell, who then kind of disappeared off and sort of filled a gap for Birmingham Panthers. Kind of a lot to work out. I think I'd be keen to see like a bit of an involvement in their game plan. So how that works, I've said that all year really, so that's not new for me. So how they do that, I think, is really important, and maybe sort of something a little bit different from wing attack, mid-court sort of like wing attack, goal attack, that kind of area. A little bit more of an attacking kind of variety is probably what I'd be looking for.
Claire?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at kind of who's leaving. So Jodie Gibson, I think, an absolute hero this season. I'm so pleased that she was able to get kind of season before she planned her retirement, and she has been the definition of why you have a squad and not a starting seven, because she's just been formidable off the bench. So I think, replacing her, there's going to be some big boots to fill. But I think you want to kind of also be maybe looking at a different style of goalkeeper as well, to have kind of impact at both goalkeeper and goal defence if needs be. I think I'd love to see a bit more trust put into Bella Bayliss. I'm with you there, Paul. I think she's a lovely little player. She's also shown a huge amount of loyalty towards the club, which I know doesn't earn you court time, but I think whenever she has come on, she has proved her worth. And so I think, why not, kind of, when they have been in sticky situations, she offers something quite different. And yeah, I think I'd love to see more of her on the court. And then I think again, it's maybe Loughborough haven't quite solidified how they play without Mary, is maybe what I'm gonna conclude with. I think, Sammy Wallace-Joseph has had moments of brilliance, and we've seen her kind of at her best, but then we've also seen her when she maybe hasn't been the answer for Loughborough. And I think availability, I think across the shooting end, has been a bit of a sticky point for Loughborough, which previously they've been able probably to get themselves out of with Mary Chollock. This year, not so much. So I think, again, a mixture of, actually, if they're sticking with their attacking end, they have to solidify kind of what their structures are. But if not, I think you really need a kind of a bit of a mover and a shaker in that goal attack, a little bit like a kind of Nicole Briacht kind of style, to be able to continue to supply ball, but as well as be there as an option as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're saying all of this and they got to the grand final. So
Yeah,
I
they've
wonder
done
how
a bad
much.
job of the.
Yeah, I think to your point, like, is it how much of this is can we coach this? And I reckon with the front end, they'll think, if provided all players are on board and happy with it, they'll think they can coach their way through the attacking end. The mid-court, I'm completely with you. I think Bella Bayliss has to be the investment, so I can't see that moving, because that's a lot of time. She was there the season before as well. And then with the defence, if they do, we know we've got that gap, and if they keep Shadeen van der Merwe, then it's got to be a domestic, right? Again, in that situation. So look around at your goal defences and goalkeepers in this league that are English or Welsh and start asking who could go in there. Thunder. What are we saying, Claire?
Thunder. It feels that this one feels really tricky, because obviously they've had so many chops and changes. So that feels really tricky in terms of what they might need or might be focusing on when they haven't had a season where they've had consistency, particularly around the goal attack. Maybe a little bit, again, wing attack wise, I think Emma Rayner was kind of starting to become the more obvious starter, but then we were starting to see more and more of India come in on the change a lot more. So I think it'll be really interesting next season, that when they do kind of have a full fit 10, then what do they look like? But it's felt hard at times to maybe see or buy into your typical Thunder style when they've had so many adversities, challenges, etc. And I think, again, given what they've had to contend with, they've done a very, very good job, which is credit to probably, again, the pathway, the culture, coaching, etc.
I feel like their issue might be just keeping it to 10, because they'll have Nat Metcalf back. Lois Pearson will be fully fit and ready to go again. It's like, actually, we've seen Anya Williams, we've seen Shannon Malik kind of play their part in India. Massa, as you've said, defensive end, sort of Liam McCormick was brilliant at times where they used her. Nick Smith kind of had half a season. I think the sell here, if you're Karen, is like, right, let's forget last season. Let's all get back together again. and let's go. Because I think a full season of El Murray and Lois as your first choice starting two, with Amy Carter and Nat Metcalf in behind them, and Emma Rayner being a really good change up in both of those positions. I don't feel we saw enough of that, to your point, this year. Like I feel like that's what we'll want to see next year, and I think that's probably what Karen will be focused on.
What do you think of Paige Reed in that as well?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I mean. That all their options are there. Like, it depends on how they want to evolve it, like, right? Because you could have all four, but it would give them a pretty difficult dilemma most of the time.
So we reckon mostly stick then. Manchester Thunder,
I think.
Mostly stick. Figure out with all your riches. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think that it's putting the puzzle pieces together. I think broadly, I think Manchester Thunder would be delighted that they've got talent coming through. If someone comes in for their top players, they know that the conveyor belt is working well, because players often tend to go to SSN eventually. But yeah, no, I think Paige Reed for me would be a question mark, probably out of that group. Knowing, like, off the back of those last performances, but it's hard to tell, right? Because she was injured. She spent most of the season away, just as Lois Pearson did. So depends how Karen Gregg wants to proceed with that. But I think I'm with you guys. I think it's mostly stick. Now, last team, Dragons. We'll say ahead of this, we are aware, having spoken to some folks, that things may not all be totally well there in terms of contracting. We have reached out to Dragons to clarify that. We haven't heard back from them at the time of recording, but let's imagine we've got a team coming back. What would you do with that team there, Claire? Because there's one big thing, right? The 2-point shot in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we know Chelsea Beard won't be returning. She has some absolutely very exciting news with her and her family, and her husband signing out to France. So very exciting for her and her family. So there is definitely a gap there to be filled. And yeah, I think, again, you probably want more of both a kind of goal shooter, goal attack. Yeah, I think you want to ensure that is got to be a priority, I think, to be able to really, really kind of solidify themselves as part of that unit. We also know, after announcement today, that Elle McDonald is back to Australia for a new chapter for her, which is also very exciting. So, for me, there is an outstanding wing defence position to be filled. And again, you would hope, and very much fingers crossed, that all is going well with Leah Middleton's rehab, and so you think that she's back in the mix as well to join up with what's been, a very successful back end, I'd say, for Dragons. And again, I think the partnership between Casey and Beth Dyke has worked very well this season. That's been really nice to watch it grow. But again, if for whatever reason you kind of needed a change up or a personnel change, yeah, I guess I think there'd probably be a couple of spots where you need to be thinking, actually, what is going to really elevate and boost the squad that will complement the kind of the talent that's already there.
Yeah, they've already got gaps to fill, probably more than that we already know. And obviously, as you've just kind of said, there's clearly some issues that need to be resolved behind the scenes. But no Elle McDonald, no Chelsea Beard, and you would think, considering we didn't see her all season, Betha Kuya-Dale is not going to be around as well. So that's 3 of your 10 already that you're going to need to replace. So, what that identity is going to be. And it feels like Cardiff are always trying to kind of reset, and there's never a chance to kind of get any real consistency. And unfortunately, it probably looks like they'll be kind of there again, and you'd like to think they'll be able to keep hold of their better players and be able to give them a core group going forward. That would be what I think. I think there's kind of a lot to pull together down there.
That's all 8 teams.
Well done.
With stuff to do, with work to be done. Simple, and maybe it's already been done, and now we have to wait until the 5th of September to hear it all. Right.
I think that's kind of just about it, isn't it? We've got some questions, but I feel like, having looked through them, we've answered most of them in different ways. We spoke about transparency, priorities for 2026. Centralized venues was one question. Like, do we think that's something that has value? I kind of don't think so. I think building a brand, building an identity has been a big part of this year, and Forest are a great example of that.
I think that has to be worked out with ticket sales and the return to clubs, like what they get from that if it is centralised. You floated the idea of a centralised sort of semi-final. Perhaps that's something, but I think clubs will, that home advantage is not just for the fans, it's for tickets.
Yeah.
So how that gets worked through, I think, is a big part of what centralised venues really looks like.
Yeah, I think as well from a player's perspective as well. As soon as someone says central venue, it takes me back to the COVID days, which you spent half your time in Wakefield, half your time at the Copper Box, which again, it was fine, but I think as a player, your home means so much to you. It's how kind of your changing rooms are decorated. Your home venue has so much a part to play of your team and again your culture of your team that again maybe might not be thought of by fans, but there is an absolute excitement with any athlete when it's that kind of, it's your home game and you're in that special place that means quite a lot to you playing there. Centralized venues, I think, takes away that specialness.
I think ultimately how it grows as well, right? Like we want home fans creating fantastic atmospheres. Forest was good at that. Forest were good at that at the Motorpoint Arena this year. Thunder are always good at it, whether it's at Bellevue or at the AO Arena. I think we've definitely seen like the Copper Box come alive over the last few years. That's a real home place to play. I think we want to see those kind of things. Yeah,
So I'm just like, next gen will need to play Super Shot too. Someone put that as a comment. I agree.
I think that's fair.
Get it done. Have we got data on the number of fans who attended matches this season? No, we have. We tried very early on to get that. Yeah, and we hope that that's data that we'll be able to get from England Netball and the Super League eventually. But the answer to that is no. But we have, not through a want of trying, right?
Transparency. That was my thing, wasn't it? That would help with transparency.
Totally. And I suppose the other one is what's the priority for 2026, but I think we spoke about that as well, like what we would do, what we would change going forwards. I think as we've all kind of agreed, like let's see how it all lands and let's see what gets announced and then hopefully work backwards what they've learnt from all of that.
Yeah, so that about puts a bow on it. That puts a bow on the season. And obviously Claire's heading off to Australia as well. So we wish you well, Claire.
Thank you very much, and congrats on the podcast, guys. You smashed it.
Thank you.
Well, you hopefully will have... when are you leaving, Claire? Is it soon?
We're aiming for the end of August. We're essentially just waiting for our visas to come back to allow us in the country. But we've got the go-ahead and we are allowed. And yeah, we're both thankfully on the kind of the wanted list, I suppose, as far as jobs are concerned. So yeah, we've kind of gone through the heavy process of visa application, job interviews, etc. So it is just more of a waiting game now, which is nice.
Well, the very best of luck to you both. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic adventure. Our adventure, Chloe, we are going to carry on. We didn't mention it, but we've got a special Unlocked coming in a little bit later on this week, haven't we? Because I'm on holiday, then you're on holiday. So we've done some pre-recording.
Yes, I'm very excited for everybody to get to this one. We have one of our Unlocked series with England and London Mavericks is Razia Quashie, and we catch up with her about her injury, but there's a lot to be learned, I think, through this one, so I would really encourage people to look out for it when it drops and give it the hour that we had to really listen to what she has to say, because it's a lot. There's a lot there. And at the end of it, I think you learn a lot about Raz as a person. And it's so fortunate that players, come and they open themselves up like that and be vulnerable like that. And I think, Paul, generally on this podcast, with Claire here telling us that her exciting news going in the future, like how much all of our guests have meant on this podcast. They've really made it, and we're really lucky to have had so many great ones. That's literally how I was going to finish it off. Like, this was a bit of a kind of throwing
dart throw for us when we started out at the start of the year, kind of how much time it would take, what it was going to look like. But we also were pretty clear that we wanted to be a platform for ex-players, current players, coaches, former coaches, even Jace Bode all the way down in Australia, right, as a head of elite performance down there. So, yeah, it's been a brilliant first season. It's gone way better than we could have imagined. But we'll figure out a plan for the off season. But I think I definitely need my holiday. And I know you've already got work assignments lined up, Chloe, as well after a holiday yourself. So we'll try and squeeze some stuff in. But we will be
Absolutely. We will. Threat.